and this is our plan of attack.
Banks have become an essential threat to our democracy. So consider this justice.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the internet. Please help support this station so this battle can continue forward. Revolution Radio!
February is Heart Month. Every year for the month of February, to show our appreciation to Extendivite's faithful customers, we have a sale. If you would like to try Extendivite, now is the time to get a few months ahead and really give Extendivite the time to show you how it works. Most of Extendivite's long-term customers wait for this sale to stock up. People and doctors tell us about the unbelievable improvements that they have experienced in their overall health, not just the heart. Extendivite wants you to experience the power of these herbs. Get a 4-month supply for only $115 for either the capsules or tincture. Please take advantage of this once-per-year sale and get healthy for life. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio at revolution.radio. And I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is Thomas Becker, and our guest today is Krsanna Duran, or Duran, whatever it is, Duran. We had that song. And we're going to be talking about a bunch of things today. We're going to look at polar vortices, hurricanes, earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanoes, global warming, climate change, pollution, Nibiru, Planet X, the many ice ages, and the rising seas, the sinking cities. And all these things happen surely to drive us crazy and send us scrambling for safety. But we're going to continue. We're going to get back in time to the creation story, the interactions between the Earth and other heavenly bodies, and the hybridization of human beings that are recorded in ancient texts, the Sumerian tablets, the Bible, and other ancient and holy writings, and the oral histories, and how they vary based on culture, context, and what happened in the past, and what can we do about it, and can we control ourselves long enough to stop the seas rising? So we have a bunch of things we're talking about, tectonic plates and the asteroid belt and the Illumination, and I'm sure we're not going to get to it all. Time and time travel. And is the Earth hollow? Thomas, the Mad Painter, just had a 3-hour show on hollow Earth right before us. The moon, is it artificial? And Tiamat, and how Tiamat became the Earth. So before I bring on our third party of the panel today, we're doing a 3-way panel, and a Mad Painter, you can chime in anytime you want. Krsanna Duran. Sasha, what would you like to say?
Okay, we are really privileged to have you here, Krsanna. Krsanna is a person whose intrinsic wisdom will hit you right where you need it if you just open yourself to her. She's one of the most articulate and learned people I've had on the show, and I just want you to listen up. And I'm really interested in Agartha, or Inner Earth, because I did some studies of Portuguese, hired some Germans in Brazil who worked their way to Bodland in Antarctica, and the story of Janssen, who actually went from the North Pole to the South Pole and reported stuff. So we have, and about the internal sun and about the hollowness of listen, just listen up to her. She's going to educate you.
Okay, Krsanna, where do you want to start? We have all these topics we were gathering for this show. What's the hottest? What's the most relevant for you? Where do you want to start? Are you there, Krsanna?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Where we are relative to all those things right now and how we're going to move into the future. Because the changes we're experiencing right now with the beginning of a mini ice age is going to affect us for a long time. And it's going to change the way we live. It will change our life. We're going back to conditions in which the Iceman lived. The nature of the diseases we have will change. Our nutrition will change. And there's not a doubt in my mind that the way we see the world will change with the changes that we're in right now. How's that?
That's
Love
a good
it.
start. So tell us about this.
Wait. For just tuning in now.
Okay, you go first then.
Okay, no, we have to know who Krsanna is. If you're just tuning into this show and you didn't hear the last one, just introduce everybody to you a little bit before we go into data. Okay.
All right, I'm a UFO experiencer, born in Oklahoma City, Bethany, Oklahoma, actually, right outside Oklahoma City. My father was a Nazarene ministerial student at Bethany when he met my mother, and I grew up under the wing of the Nazarene religion. And by the time I was 12, I had resigned from Christianity. Yes, I learned quick. And
I did that too.
At the age of 15, I was having UFO experiences since early childhood. But by the time I was 15, I was actually picked up. And then later, so I was picked up and indoctrinated. I knew who I was, sort of. I knew where I was going, sort of. And I knew it was not with the Nazarenes. And then I'm going to add some stuff to my bio because something I saw this afternoon. In 1992, an entity that I call Syrian George began contacting me. Syrian George was a very big, buff guy, human, and hilarious. He had an enormous sense of humor. And he used to play jokes on me all the time, which of course upset me because I wanted him to take me seriously. And from there, he and his cohort told me the geometry to use for when working with the Mayan calendar, and it's 5 tetrahedra. And I eventually began doing predictions. In 1998, Syrian George told me that we were going into a solar phase shift. In other words, the phase the sun is in would shift during the 2012 solar maximum. And after that, we would go into a mini ice age, a cold period. And I really, that is one of the best predictions I've ever seen, because here we are. And this is changing the way we live. So that is who I am. Did I explain it?
Okay. So,
I should.
Yes. How does global warming cause us to be cold? How does that work?
Yeah, but wait, let her get. What was the last thing you wanted to add? You said I should say. Go ahead, add what you were going to say.
I did administrative work all my life, and I was the business manager for the foreign languages, modern and classical languages, at the University of Montana when I retired in 2011. So that gives you my background there. Now, how does global warming lead us into global cooling? Well, that occurs on multiple levels. First, you have to understand global warming, and that it is a climate change. Now, the climate is long-term cycles. Weather is immediate cycles, today, tomorrow, and next week. And the way global warming has affected the weather that we're having right now with the polar vortexes is that there is a whirlpool or a vortex above each of the magnetic poles. And as the atmospheric temperature rises above the Arctic, the vortex over the Arctic begins to get looser and looser and finally starts penetrating further south. Okay? But this is just one phase of a much larger cooling period. In other words, the global cooling for ice ages goes back 700,000 years, longer than that, actually. And we have a ice age about every 90,000 years, with a 10,000-year interlude between glacial periods. And the 10,000 years between the glacial periods started around 10 to 8,000 BC. Pardon me?
I get it. We're changing. This is it.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the question.
Say that again, honey. You broke up.
I get it that this is it. It's happening.
Yeah, and this is the tail end of the 10,000-year warming period in which we developed the civilization. And it came at the end of a 90,000-year ice age. So as we end the warming period and head into the ice age, the mini ice age at first, but we are due. Cyclically, we are due for another ice age. It comes and goes in spurts. It comes and goes in little tiny cycles, like it'll warm and then it'll heat. Right? Like when you're boiling a pot of water, for example, you get little bubbles rising to the top before you get the boil. Right? And the same with ice cubes. When you freeze ice cubes, at first you get a little thin layer of ice before the whole ice cube freezes. So we're in a period like right now. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to know. And so, the other thing, though, from an interventionalist and a perspective, and the perspective of someone who's been researching Garth, I'd say that we can. There's high civilizations within the Earth that Purdue that are able, that this is, they're fine with that. They have their own source of heat. And I just wondered what your take is on those stories.
Well, first of all, to me, they're more than stories. We have plenty of reports. We have plenty of reports from reliable witnesses that there are civilizations within the earth, more than one. Okay? Agartha is one. Agartha was, as I recall, in the area of the Gobi Desert. And then there was Shambhala, and that was like a sister civilization. And what I know about Shambhala specifically is from the Masters of the Far East. The Theosophical Masters wrote about that. And it's an evolution of the earth itself. And as far as Agartha goes, I am not quite sure. I know that where Agartha was, I don't know its current status, but I know that where it was is the Gobi Desert. So, yes, and I do believe that a lot of these, I'm sorry?
Yeah, as my information is exactly the same, that it was in the Gobi Desert that the Federation landed its second contingent, not the Atlans, but the people that had fled from Maldek, and they could come from the Gobi side, and it's indicated directly. Everything I know seems to confirm the things that you're saying. But right. The other thing is to inside say that every 25,000 years they have the same thing. There's a Kalki arises at the change of the ages, or we could say that Shiva marks the change of the ages, or the age of Aquarius is coming in. But all the traditions seem to me to be saying the same thing, both about what the inner Earth and our ability to survive environmental rigors on the surface, that it's better in there, and civilization can preserve itself both by going inside but also by going off planet. And then there's this stuff from
they actually did that 30,000 years ago.
Oh.
The information I have from the time travelers is that the Atlanteans and the Lemurians were in constant warfare.
Yeah.
And Dan Fry, remember Dan Fry? He is the one who was a rocket scientist. Daniel Fry was a rocket scientist at Alamogordo, or White Sands Proving Ground in circa 1949. And he was picked up, and they put him on a remote scout ship, and he traveled from New Mexico to New York and back in 30 minutes. And in the course of their conversations, they explained to Dan Fry that the Atlanteans and Lemurians were in a vicious war cycle, and finally it got so bad. Now, my own contact said it got so bad they were afraid they were going to throw this planet out of orbit again. So the Lemurians, for the most part, left. Many of them left. They went to Arcturus and other destinations in the solar system. That's from my contacts. That's what I know of them. But they see us as their little brothers. We are their genetics, and they see us as family, and they have always watched over us. And they did, make contracts. They had a treaty with the Atlanteans. And I think the Atlanteans are not identical to the Anunnaki. I think the Anunnaki are a third group. But the Atlanteans were closer to the Anunnaki than the Lemurians. And basically, what we have been taught, our history comes from sort of a leveling of these three sources, Lemurians, Atlanteans, and Anunnaki. And a lot of it is just for children. They're children's stories. Do you tell, your child about the rigors of sexuality at age 5? No. The child doesn't even ask. You answer their questions. And you tell them what they can accept at any given age. And as they get older, they start putting it together. And a lot of the stories that we have are exactly that. Not about sex, but about where did we come from? Who's my mother and father? What am I going to be when I grow up? Right? I mean, those are the stories we've been given. And anyone who thinks that it's just literal fact has no appreciation of the finer aspects of the human mind.
Wow. I concur. I just wanted to say that my sources, again, dovetail with yours, that the Lemurians and who had gone underground, and the Atlanteans were destroying land to get them underneath and so forth. Finally, that a council of Hatona in the Andromeda group was called, so that it was agreed that they would make a proto-humanoid or Earthling that would have contributions from whoever had good claims on Earth. So one reptilian group, and which gave us our brain stems, and the others were 12 hominoid Lyran type groups, made protos all over the place. And but there's this intercession, just as you said, by others that are saying this is dumb, cut it out, let us help you. Exactly.
And actually, I have another book that Ida Kannenberg wrote, which I publish. And it's called My Brother is a Hairy Man. It's about the human evolution on Earth and how the Anunnaki groups played a part in it. So we are, as a species, are not just homogenous. We are hybridized wildly. And that was the objective, is that we embody the differences of the many ET races that were involved with it. And the outcome is pretty interesting because we're very curious, we're very creative, and very psychic. We're much more psychic than some of our ancestors. And what I was saying, what they told Dan Fry, is that more than 20,000 years ago, he talked about the ferocious wars that the Atlanteans and Lemurians had, and he says more than 20,000 years ago, some of them left the Earth.
Yeah.
And that was carried out, then an Arcturian expanded on that with more information and said that basically 30,000 years ago, about 30,000 years ago, they gave many Lemurians an opportunity to go to Arcturus or elsewhere. Okay? And some people took that opportunity and went to Arcturus, and they proceeded to make their own mistakes. Arcturus is not perfect, but Arcturus has a really unique role in the solar system. And Edgar Casey, I don't know if you're familiar with him, he didn't talk about the stars very much, but he talked about Arcturus in some length. And so then they've always maintained, they've always kept an eye on it. So what they told me, what the Arcturians told me, because I developed an Arcturian contact. It was a long time in the making, but it started flowering in about 2010, and they told me, and it was quite very specific, that they had been, those people who are now the Arcturians, had been in the Orion system, and they had been at war. You know, there were just horrendous wars throughout this part of the galaxy at one time. And they had been at war in the Orion system when the Horsehead Nebula went nova. And that nova mutated their DNA. And their descendants, of which we are among them, became very psychic. A lot of the, and because not all ETs are all that psychic, but we are. We're more psychic than a lot of the ETs who contact us. So that's my own information, that they were in the Orion system. And and what they said is that they were able to escape the Orion system, and they came to this planet, Earth, in an attempt to escape the war, the constant war. And they left the human, what became humanity, came from their seeding. Now, we're not the only ones, right? In other words, they're not the only ancestral parents who were ETs, but they contributed in a lot of the psychic ability that we have, and it comes from the mutation from the Orion system. Thought you might be interested in that.
Oh, I am indeed.
So, anyway, so Agartha,
Never mind. Go ahead.
So anyway, I don't know the status of Agartha now. I know it was in the Gobi Desert. Shambhala is allied, or was allied, with Agartha. And it is a relatively recent evolution within the planet itself. And I will tell you that Helena Blavatsky wrote that Shambhala used to be a village in the Himalayas. And then it just disappeared. And this was in the culture stories. You know, the culture stories are called the Puranas. And so that story that Shambhala was in the Himalayas and then it wasn't is one of the culture stories. But what that means to me is that it could, because my whole concept of how this happens is that you have to, as long as you're surviving, you reach a certain point in your human incarnation, in your human evolution, where you basically go supernova. You go nova. The species of which you're a part somehow has takes an exponential leap and goes into another spectrum. And that's the way I see Shambhala. Like it was in the Himalayas, and they used to write about it. The stories about Shambhala as a village in the Himalayas is in the Puranas, and then it just disappeared. And now we have Shambhala in the inner earth. And I think that the inhabitants of Shambhala just went over unity. They reached a certain point in their energy that they were able to take root in a different energy spectrum.
Yeah. The other thing is Leach talks about another kind of a federation was with a head of it being Bodlanders, but the main idea, they were called Atlantean Aturians. And they were trying to escape from all this mess too. And there's some reptilians who are allies too, are not at all at war within Bodland's larger kind of confederation. And this is from information, much more current information that Leach, the person, was leaking from the government basically through Leach's books. John Leith's books.
Got it. Well, you know what? We have to be careful when we get information that's leaked from the government. Because leaking disinformation may be part of their master plan. Yeah. And we think, oh boy, look what we found. But they actually planted it. So whenever I get anything, quote unquote, leaked from the government, I want triple the evidence to back it up. I won't just outright totally reject it, but I do require quite a bit of evidence to support it. I don't take it at face value.
Okay, so how I got this was a person who used to work in intelligence services, came up to me and he said, "You're the one to read this book and share what it says." And he says it's not exactly right, but it's as close to the truth as we can get. And then he forgot he gave it to me, and he got sick, and he went right home and disowned the entire sequence of things, but left me with this remarkable book. And when I applied Occam's razor, does this stuff, even if it's made up, explain a lot of stuff, about the Nazis taking shelter down there later on, and the defeat of Byrd in 1947. And it seemed to tie a whole bunch of stuff together. And even if it was fiction, it explains stuff. So that's where I was left with that stuff.
Right. Well, I'm not saying throw it away or don't give it any credibility. What I am saying is be very careful with it. Pardon me. And demand redundant evidence to support it.
Yeah.
It's all different sources. So that you're getting a redundant signal for its veracity.
Thank you. Yeah.
And
thank you. That's useful.
Richard, Pardon me?
Pardon? I know. I said thank you. That's really useful.
I thought we're getting kind of a bad line here. Could you repeat that, please?
I like what you said. It helps me a lot. I want to do a better job, and you're helping me. Thank you.
Okay. Well, we have to all be careful. We have to all verify our data twice and 3 times, not just once. Especially in this age of disinformation, where we are managed with deliberately inserted falsehoods. And then we can't tell the truth from lies.
So we have no idea, we have no way to really ascertain what's true and false. We can only look at the information and see what emerges.
Right.
So, I mean, because we can't prove anything. I can't even prove I'm alive. It's really impossible. So we were talking about that before the show. How do we make that determination? What is information? What is disinformation? Do you want to go down that road right now, or do you want to stay where we are until we exhaust what we're talking about?
Well, we could. I don't have that much more to say about Agartha or Shambhala. Do you?
No. Let's go on. No,
I just know that I personally have been to some underground facilities that when I was a child I would go astrally all the time to the underworld. And I'm not sure what was going on there, but I just know I was doing it and I was looking for something. I kept looking for something. And
Right.
So I'm not sure. That's still a mystery. But I know I was doing it, and I know I was following some kind of guidance to go do that.
Right. Well, there are real
let's go on to another topic. Yeah.
Is Sasha have something to say?
There. Did you have anything more to add before
they are there.
Topics?
No, that's fine. I just, it's like, how can we, given the sociopolitical state of this planet, prepare for the ice age that's upon us, so that there's a minimization of suffering? That's what I think. I'd like to hear.
Well, we're going to have to change our farming method. That's for sure.
How do we do that? How do we change it?
Well, we can change, do a lot of alternative methods, indoor farming, indoor gardening. And we're going to have to realize also that as the sun declines, and it doesn't happen in one day, and it doesn't happen in one fell swoop. It rises and falls until finally you're in the dead of the ice age. But without the high heat, in the last 10,000 years, we've just had so much heat on this planet, and it even develops the nutrition of food. I have long suspected this, that it's going, the lack of solar activity with vegetation is going to reduce the nutrition of food. And I actually got a confirmation of that in 2017, 18, and 19, the protein content of wheat is lower than it was in previous years because we're having this dimming sun. So we have to find ways to get around that somehow. But most of all, we've got to understand it's not going to be the way it always was in the past. We have just been, in my opinion, out of control. Anyone could just almost live outdoors in a lot of places in the world. It's not going to be like that anymore. You're going to have shelter for very cold periods. And we're not going to have such a high population as we do now. The numbers of the population will dwindle with the nutrition and the challenges to survival that we're facing into. And when it's all done, my suspicion in 100,000 years is that it's going to be a greatly reduced but much hardier population. Humans will be. If you think about it, we've had ice ages for the last 700,000 years, for 90% of it. And we've all survived. We have survived. And then after the warming started, about 10,000 years ago, we just suddenly exponentially morphed and became a huge population on the earth that, frankly, feeding your own children, it challenges a lot of people. And the idea of educating that child that you can barely feed is just beyond the reach of a lot of people. And that's going to have to change. We're going to have to curtail the population numbers to something, to a level we can feed in a healthy way, and I believe educate. And that will change the entire nature of culture on this planet.
So how do we determine what the ideal population is? There's certainly some way to calculate it best based on resources and environment and food and, you know, all that stuff. Do you have any ideas? How do we shift from this part? Well, right now we are where we are, and humans don't really budge until the emergency is upon them, for the most part, right? So
right,
we'll probably get there because, you know, we'll have some kind of drama or an emergency, and that's usually how we operate. You know, we find solutions once we're there. Are we always going to be able to bail ourselves out, or are we just going to be?
I don't think we'll bail ourselves out a lot. Just getting by with subsistence, you know, eating dated from hand to mouth, day to day. No, we're not going to. This kind of environmental threat requires some planning, organization, and production. And we're just going to have to be honest about what we're doing with the world people. You can't just... and that, there's a lot of things... religion has a lot to do with this runaway population that we have. Be fruitful and multiply. And
yeah, it seems like people kind of took that literally, and they overdid that one. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes, I do know what you mean, because a lot of people, that's all they're capable of doing, is literal thinking. And when as the population decreases, we're just going to have to deal with the psychic forces that are incarnating in our species. And that is what I think ET does. ET manages their population. And we need to manage our population so that whenever a child is born, he has some hope of food to sustain at a high level his human potentials, and B, an education to develop the character and the personality and the mind of the child. And we're just going to have to figure that out, because that's where our true survival will stand. And I tell you, I really feel sorry for people who are born in these third world countries, and just the babies just have no guarantee. There's no birthright of meeting their physical needs and their intellectual and their spiritual needs. It just doesn't exist. And I think that is a fault of ours. And we've got to come to terms with that. And I don't know what it's going to take to do that, but it must be done. Because we're really doing ourselves in. We're shooting ourselves in the foot the way we're going. Well, we have masses with unmet needs. And so they never fully develop in their human potential. So it's all about human potential, our potential. That is our potential. And it's got to come, and we've got to deal with it. And I will tell you what I suspect, and that is that as the temperatures continue to drop, it's not going to happen in one night. It may happen more in another 5 years. But as the temperatures drop and the ice age sets in, having, being able to care for the human species, your fellow humans with intention, becomes more and more important. Because, we've been living in a warming period where living is easy. And that is got to end. that is ending. We're not doing it. It's just the cycle of the planet. You know, in 1816, the Tambora volcano erupted and blanketed the planet with debris, volcanic debris, that blocked the sun. And there was no summer that year. I mean,
Right.
even in the United States. And it's called The Year Without a Summer. You can find some books on it.
Right.
And
yeah, we've heard about that
millions.
before.
Yeah,
Millions and
people, millions, yes.
Millions and millions died from starvation. So
we're
My
going to have that
thing-
happen again here soon. What, when is it going to start? Is it? Because we're all like have our heads in the sand. Well, that's not going to affect us until it's too late. It's like, how do you wake people up to this? How do you activate them without sounding like Chicken Little in the fall? The sky is falling. The sky is falling. So how do we?
Or simulators. How about simulator technology that you were studying, Janet?
What's that? Simulators?
What about that simulator technology that evidently is within our means, alternate ways of feeding ourselves? One of the things that we find out is that people, Moni Nag identified this way back in the 50s, when people have choice about reproduction or not, they tend to and they don't, and they free themselves from the church or the rural attitudes that you've got to have lots of kids. They start limiting their populations automatically, and it certainly goes with food. It's really people need choice and information, and everything will flow from that. It seems to me.
Well, that's partially true. I do agree with you. When people have information and they have choice, they'll do the best they can. When they don't have information and they have very little choice and they're driven by dogmatic religious commandments, they don't always make the best choices. But let me put it like this. In its ultimate state, I'll call it a state, when the crops fail, there's a little choice about how you're going to feed yourself and who will be fed. We already had food shortages in the last couple of years. And so that's where we've got to put attention. How do we develop farming methods that are suited for the weather we're going into? Because that is what killed so many people in 1816. They couldn't grow their crops. It was wide-scale crop failure.
What I think about? What about like in Vermont kind of places where people make these underground greenhouses and growing stuff underneath the ground, underneath the cold ground, makes heat that heats the other parts and takes care of the animals. And people in Finland and Eskimos have given Inuits have given us all kinds of examples of kinds of adaptations we could have.
Exactly, that's an example. Your average family can farm vertically in their garage with the proper lighting and everything. I don't see how people are going to survive in the next 20 years if they don't grow what they can locally when they have the opportunity. And maybe they need massive greenhouses to do that. That's definitely an option. And I'll tell you what, I'd sure rather spend the money on that than on nuclear bombs.
Yes.
Well, that's why it doesn't seem logical what's going on. It seems like somebody wants us to all die, and to die in horrible ways, which create a lot of drama. And then who's capitalizing on the drama? Somebody's reaping the rewards or the energy or the profits based on the drama that we're experiencing. Because this is just like, remember, who was that? Joseph was in Egypt, and he had the predictions of what was coming, and so they knew there were going to be 7 years of extreme bounty and 7 years of harshness. So we're coming up on this, or is it upon us already and it's too late? But when I was a kid, people used to grow crops okay, we got 5 minutes before the break. Grow crops all summer long, and they would can. Remember Grandma and everybody would can their goods, preparing for when we're going to have harsh times.
Yes,
we're all in the moment.
I came from a family of farmers. But see, we're going to have to really get clever about even that, because with low solar activity, the crops themselves will not reach their greatest potential. So we're going to have to find some way to handle the crops to increase their nutrition.
Well, right now we're still producing enough food. We haven't entered that phase yet. It's probably not going to be this summer. So, but we really, somehow, because it's not in their face, people don't believe it till it's too late.
Well, I think it has already influenced us, these conditions, because this is February, and there are crops that get started that early, like winter wheat, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So the harsh conditions we had this year have already affected us. We simply must work in community.
Right. So,
one person,
but nobody's going to believe it. They'll just say this was They'll just say this is just part of the cycle, and they won't get that it's the mini ice age. They won't get it. What that means.
I know they won't. But they have to have it.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't mean we should shut up. We need to just or talk louder, talk braver, talk further, until people do get it. And they will. It's not going to take that long. They're already feeling it.
So
I got to say, for us old people, we ain't going to be around for some of this, but we got kids and grandkids, and we want them to have a life. And we got to give them an opportunity to have the tools to be able to survive. I think you're right on.
Right, we've got to. That's our future. And if you don't mind my asking, Sasha, what is your best prospect for another body for reincarnation?
I don't give a damn. All I know is minute to minute, like every day is a blessing. I am so happy here now with this life I've got. Today is a good day to live, and today is a good day to die. That's where I'm at.
Well, that's one heck of a philosophy. It works for me. I still have things I want to get done. I'm not ready to just take off. I've survived 2 near-death experiences, or 2 harrowing illnesses the doctors just didn't think I'd survive. So, and I still think I'm not done.
Your mission still is not finished, yes.
No, it's not finished, and it's not going to be finished for at least another 100 years.
There you go. I like your spunk. Well, we're coming up on a break in like 1 minute. Yeah.
What about you, Janet?
Oh, I'm happy being here. I've been working on physical immortality and longevity for a long time, and I'll do everything I can until I draw my last breath. But I think that there's something that we need to do about creating awareness of what's happening with these earth changes and global warming and everything, but somehow putting together, people like science, so somehow showing it to everybody scientifically might get people to get up and pay attention. So we'll be working on that. We're going to be having a break in just about 30 seconds here. But what are we going to talk about when we return? Until the music comes on. Where do you want to go after the break with our discussion? Okay, well, we're having a break. We'll be back in about 5 minutes, and we'll continue this dialogue. Aloha. See you soon.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. We'll be right back after this message.
There needs some more speed records in this day and age. You need coverage.
Coverage? Oh, you mean them little root weevils that crawl around popping off cameras in your face?
Those root weevils write history.
Many of you know that quote by Jack Nicholson in A Few Good Men. You can't handle the truth. Well, you can, and Event Horizons will give you those truths. So when you're mad as hell and not going to take it anymore from that memorable CNN network, you'll know just what to do. We will draw you in and become your news addiction at Event Horizons. Join us Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to noon Eastern Time at freedomslips.com. At Revolution Radio. Our world team members are Dennis Fetcho, John Ilias, David Dunger, Hyla Cass, MD, Melanie Vrichjan, Jim Mars, Paula Harris, John Trallo, Maria Payan, Christopher Husser, DODDS, Jonathan Orchard, and me, your anchor, Dr. Robin Falco.
If you decide not to volunteer, it will not be held against you in any way.
Sounds dangerous.
It is. Very dangerous.
Count me in.
And that's right here, Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, where information never sleeps. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank, or all the banks for that matter. Are your banking records safe in your hands? So when they get things fixed and repaired, you can say, hey, look, this is what I had. You have it. I want it back. Is your personal data safe? Family records, addresses, phone numbers? Well, squeeze on over to freedomslips.com. Yes, that's www.freedomslips.com. Click the banner on the homepage for the EMP-proof bullet drive to get the full scoop of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
In breaking news, A visiting Syrian diplomat reported today that their population is evolving rapidly and advancing into a fifth-dimensional consciousness. They are seeking peace with all cosmic cultures, which may mean that the Earth will be asked to join the prestigious Galactic Federation of Light Alliances. Please join Debbie West and Michael Hathaway on Lost Knowledge, Saturdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in Studio A, for the latest breaking news on the Star Visitors' peaceful contact and the ongoing project of cleansing the Earth.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you bring the machine, will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio!
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
February is Heart Month. Every year for the month of February, to show our appreciation to Extendivite's faithful customers, we have a sale. If you would like to try Extendivite, now is the time to get a few months ahead and really give Extendivite the time to show you how it works. Most of Extendivite's long-term customers wait for this sale to stock up. People and doctors tell us about the unbelievable improvements that they have experienced in their overall health, not just the heart. Extendivite wants you to experience the power of these herbs. Get a 4-month supply for only $115 for either the capsules or tincture. Please take advantage of this once-per-year sale and get healthy for life. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix on Revolution Radio. And I'm your host, Janet Lessin, with Dr. Sasha Lessin and producer Thomas Becker and our special guest, Krsanna Duran. And we are talking about all kinds of things. We just started with the global changes and mini ice ages and all kinds of interesting topics. And we're going to continue this second hour with even more. It's all on my show on aquarianradio.com. And let's see. I want to remind everybody to please go over and make that donation this week at the donation button on revolution.radio. We greatly appreciate your donation. And to make things really nice and juicy, Mad Painter Thomas Becker, what specials do we have right now?
For the seed pack, we got a special for $75 instead of $100. You save $25. You got these offers are all good through midnight Eastern Standard Time. For $50, you get a 1 ounce silver bar. For $50, you can get a survival thumb drive library, which is 900 documents plus all survival U.S. survival website. For $100 donation, you can get a T-shirt or a hat, and of course, you need the size, and you need to put your address down there in the comments on PayPal in order to receive it. So
that's a good system. Okay, Sasha, what would you like to add? Thomas, do you have anything to add to this discussion? What do you think so far?
I think it's going great. I pretty much agree with everything she's spoken about. We are headed for a mini ice age, in my opinion. It's just, if you look back in the ice records, it does the same thing before an ice age. It heats up first, then the system collapses, the Atlantic's elevator system there, and it starts an ice age.
Right.
Yeah, and
Sasha,
I do have.
Let me have Sasha say something, and then we'll go back to you, Krsanna. Remember
Okay,
where you are. Okay, go ahead.
Well, there's a few things besides the possibility of going underground and asking for refuge underground, or receiving special help from a Kalki, somebody who can unify this planet. So that we can take collective action. That's what makes our species so interesting, that we are capable of individuality, but also feeling one another. And so it's when you look at our origins from the Council of Hatona and all the later editions, all these different contributions to our genetics give us subpersonalities that we can access, parts of us that we can say, what does this part of me want? And why does it want it? And what does it really need? And in ourselves, we can make the very synthesis that that leads to transcendence, which is the ability to embrace the poles within us, because the poles within us are the same as all the poles without. And so this is a wonderful time to be alive and feel the challenges of this existence, in my humble opinion.
Back to you, Krsanna.
Okay, one thing I wanted to mention, we haven't even discussed it yet, and that is Luther Burbank was a botanist. It was in the late 19th, early 20th century. And he developed or introduced more than 60 varieties of spineless cactus. And the way he developed the spineless cactus was by meditating and talking to the cactus. So the way we treat the world, the way we communicate with our crops and with the animals, they all do make a difference. And we have just simply, I think we're learning that. You know, like the Roundup and Monsanto.
Oh, it's awful.
Life into a mechanical parade. And it's not. If it's organic, there is an intelligence inherent in it. And when we honor that intelligence and talk to the plants, sing with them, and meditate with them, cactus who don't grow spines. And we haven't even touched on that. But that, I think if we could learn to do that as a species, we'd be much more welcome in the inner earth. The one thing the inner earth has plenty of, and that's people who want to go there. But when you're knocking on the door of the inner earth saying, I want to come in, I don't like these conditions, do you expect them to just simply say, oh, sure, come on in and bring your lousy attitudes and your materialism with you, and you can make a mess out of the inner earth too? So the people who go to the inner earth are generally contacted. They watch us, trust me. There are people, there are groups in the inner earth who have been watching and developing us for a long time. They have earmarked certain people they want to bring back. And so we've got to consider what we've done with what we have when it comes to going to the inner earth. They're not a first responder rescue team. So
you said that they're watching us? How do you know all this stuff? How do you know that they're watching us?
Because they tell me
about that.
I have contact with them.
Okay, so your guides are telling you about how they're watching, and they're deciding who gets to join them in the inner earth.
That's not what you said. They're directly communicating with inner earth beings. Is that correct? That's what I got.
Would you repeat that, please?
I interpreted what you said as inner earth beings and you have directly communed, and you've gotten information directly from them. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I thought so. Thank you.
Okay, so they're saying, let's go over that again. So slow that down a little bit. What are they saying? So you kind of went over that like, I need to understand what you're saying there.
It is by invitation only. And they keep their eyes on certain people they are developing to join them.
And how do they keep an eye on us?
They watch us. They have, well, first of all, they maintain psychic communication. How does ET keep an eye on us? How do they know we've come back into incarnation? Because these contacts are multiple lives. It's not just one. You know, people say, oh, you know, some people are contacted in real infancy. I mean, really little infancy. And then other people, they're just watched from psychically. They know who their people are who've been with them before. Maybe, for instance, I got mixed up in a karmic. I used to be one of them. I got mixed up in a karmic cycle, and that pulled me out of the inner earth and that domain.
Wow.
And now we're dealing with that karmic cycle, and so I can go back. And you know, I used to think that was so stupid way back when. Now it's like, how can I do anything else? Of course I want to go home.
Yeah, yeah.
And when
now,
the ET
inner earth, is the inner earth
wait a minute,
safe from, like you? Okay, finish your thing. Okay, go ahead.
When ET comes here,
go ahead.
They say literally from another planet, like even through a Stargate. Who do they communicate with? They don't go to the White House. They communicate and they have contacts and connections with the inner Earth people. A lot of the inner Earth people came from space-faring civilizations.
Yes.
Right.
So, if you think the inner earth is not a resource so you can, well, I'm tired of, you can just say, I'm tired of this and I want to go back. No, you've got to be ready, and then they will bring you in with them.
Yeah, I guess, what I want to also say is, okay, how about giving us more information and helping us with information that can assist us in having a planet of peace and dealing with the intelligently with the climate changes?
Okay, what do you think we're talking about tonight? Why do you think you're talking about this?
Thank you.
Because they gave you this information back in '98. We're putting out information that people will need, that people do need.
I think I understand. So I got it. You are what I got now. If tell me if I got it right, is you are a direct ambassador from the inner earth with information for us. That's wonderful. That's what it feels like to me.
Well, I'm glad that you feel that way. Let's say there's not all that much difference between the inner earth and the ET civilizations. They are all different civilizations, and they used to communicate by Stargate. Like you could get into the Mars Stargate and transport over there, right? Or you could get, if you're on Mars, you could get into the Earth Stargate and transport over here. Mm-hmm. It's not the mechanical machine that people think it is. All that mechanical stuff is just misinformation. Mm-hmm. And when the ETs want to communicate, they need someone to do a project, don't you think they go to the inner earth? We're all connected.
Well, we have the story of the Nazis and the Bodlanders, and let's recount that a little bit, because they appear to have some darker beings there, reptilians. What do you know about all that? Who's down there?
I don't know.
Good guys.
No, it's not. And look at the Taros and the Daros from the Richard Schaefer contact. It's not all good guys.
Yeah, I don't know what that information is. What is that information? Explain that to us. The Taros and the Daros.
In the 1930s, Richard Shaver was working in a factory of some kind, and he started hearing like radio transmissions through some of the equipment. Well, this goes on and on and on and on. As it turned out, he was contacted by two different groups who live on this planet, and they live in the inner earth, and let's say under pyramids. He called one group the Daros and the other group the Taros. And the way to really, and they watch us from where they are. And when someone starts getting too close to them, they take action to scare them off, to prevent them from getting too close. And honestly, right now, I can't remember which was the Taro and which was the Daro. And but I'm going to look it up real quick. And
okay.
So no, this is a good story. So in 1942, so he got attacked by the very by the forces who were watching him. It says, I'm looking right now online to find which was which, the Daros or the Taros.
One of them attacked him.
Well, they attacked him. Yeah, one group attacked him, and he was, get this, and this is verified fact. He was catatonic for 8 years, and he finally came out of it. And the pro-human, the Daros were the sadists, so it was the Taros who were pro-human. And according to Shaver, what had happened is that when the vast forces, let's call it Atlantis and Lemuria, left this planet, they left equipment behind. Well, the Darrows in caves and things like that, and we see that up in the Baltic, okay? So according to Shaver, the Darrows got a hold of some of that equipment and misused it and mutated themselves. And they became really misshapen mutants. And so they live in the inner earth, they hide, and if a human gets too close, they'll attack them. He was catatonic for 8 years. Well, by 1942, he'd gotten out of the hospital, and believe it or not, he joined regular mainstream life, and he sent a letter describing what had happened to him and who had done it to Ray Palmer. I don't remember. I have to look. He was the editor of a science fiction magazine, and to their enormous surprise, something like 90,000 letters responded to that article, and people said things like, and this was 1942. People said things like, "Oh yeah, I had something like that happen." Okay. So this went on, and Richard Shaver's articles were being frequently printed, and people started complaining. And they were saying, "We don't want to hear any more true story. We want science fiction." So the editor fired Ray Palmer for publishing true stories by Richard Shaver instead of science fiction. Ray Palmer ended up working with Richard Shaver the rest of his life, and Shaver took him down and showed him some of the cave entrances and stuff like that. But you have to read the Shaver story, what Shaver wrote, because the Darrows, so the Darrows were the mutants, and the Darrows were pro-human. And they ended up in a big conflict over Ray Shaver. Richard Shaver. And he was clearly in love with one of the Darrow women, and they helped Shaver get out of the mental institution and rejoin life. Okay, so he described their flying saucers in the jargon of the day. And in 1947, when Kenneth Arnold saw the flying saucers over Mount Rainier, they're exactly what Richard Shaver had described.
Oh.
So that, we have that. There's the good and the bad. And one of the things that impressed me about Shaver is when he was describing their culture, he used ancient Greece as an example. They lived sort of like the ancient Greeks. And then the Darrow had found their equipment that they misused in caves and misused it. So yes, there's good and there's bad in all of it, in everything. Not just that story, but life is made of good and bad. You must be able to resolve the polarity to be a healthy human. And unfortunately, many people have been trained to not resolve these conflicts. Instead, they demonize and they use rituals and they leap in to destroy something they don't like or understand. That's our problem. And that's about what I can tell you in a nutshell. But you can get you can find information published by Ray Palmer and Richard Shaver's story online.
Okay, we'll look for that. How do you spell Richard's last name? Richard what?
Shaver.
Shaver, S-H-A-V-E-R.
S-H-A-V-E-R. Okay.
Right.
So, in a way, the challenge is for us to find the common ground for those, instead of demonizing and eternalizing the dualism, but to find the common ground, the oneness, what's precious to all life forms. It seems to me, and I think we're in a unique position to do that.
Right.
And
as
so
they evolve, they'll change. The negative may be more negative.
Wait, one at a time. Say that again.
Go ahead, Krsanna.
One at a time. Go ahead.
What did you say,
Okay.
Sasha?
What I said was, I was just agreeing with you. It's like as above, as so without, and so within. And once you get them all, then you realize you're just resonating, and there isn't any other. We are all part of the same. We need to have compassion rather than enmity, is what I'm saying.
Right. That's true. But we've got to also understand that the darkness is a means of evolution for some souls. That is their evolution. And we have to just accept that's the way they tick.
Yeah, I agree totally. They are on their path, and I don't know what their path is, but I know that everybody's finding their own way. Right on.
So anyway, and with that, that goes back to increasing our understanding so we can cope with each person and each situation with a higher frequency of thought and emotion, and that will actually change them, like this cactus.
Yes, yeah. Oh, it's beautiful.
It's a true story.
So the cactus were evolving and changing because of that gentleman's focus, and they actually had a movie starring Barbara Streisand, On a Clear Day You Can See Forever, and it was it started with how her plants grew because she was so psychic. And
right.
Did you ever see that? Yeah, and she would sing to them. She loved her plants.
Yeah,
and she would sing to them.
And it's
they
like
would grow and evolve.
Mm-hmm. Like the little prince's rose. Well, the little prince made his rose beautiful by loving it.
So anyway, that's just that's an option. That is the most practical option. Mm-hmm. And you can't tell someone, I want you to evolve right now. They have to go through the steps for that person needs.
So that's why we need the polarity. We don't grow and evolve without the polarity. We need both sides to continue. But will that end someday? We're in a different operating system where we no longer need to go into the dark. That we have a different system, a way of doing existence and consciousness.
Right.
Anyway. Okay, you mentioned before the break that you wanted to talk about the crop circles. What's the relevance of crop circles to what we've been discussing thus far?
Well, I have a graph, an image, a drawing of the crop circle that was made in Washington in 1993 that shows how this ice age was approaching.
Okay, did you send that to me? Did you send that to me?
Yeah, it's in one of the emails I sent you.
I'll look for it while we're talking.
And I kind of
go
wanted
ahead
to
and
go
talk
over.
about it. Yeah. Go ahead and do that while I search for that.
Well, that is the one that shows the axis shifting 3 degrees toward the British Isles. And that causes the orbit of the Earth to be different. It changes the orbit of the Earth. And that's what we're
So we're
heading into.
experiencing these axis changes. I saw something the other day. So we're experiencing axis changes right now.
That's right. Where did you see that?
On the news somewhere, or an article that popped up, and I didn't save it, and I didn't read the whole thing.
We're shifting our polar axis.
Yeah, what do you know about it, Thomas?
It happens every 72 years or something like that, I think. We changed the North Star. We changed the North Star is what we do.
Right, but that's the precession of equinoxes. And
yeah, that's what it's called.
Every 72 years, but this is different. Oh.
I'm looking for the crop circle you said. Yeah. So I'll look for that crop circle. Did you call it crop circle? I hope. Somewhere
so
within the article.
So a map of the Ice Age cropped up for us.
Here it is.
What is the title?
The Kennewick crop circle. That's what you're talking about.
Kennewick.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Kennewick crop circle. I'll pull that into this page. Explain the Kennewick crop circle to us. And I'll put that in the page.
Okay.
Show page.
The Kennewick crop circle shows it was made in 1993, right next to Hanford. And it showed the structure of the inner Earth, of the inner core of the Earth, that at that time was not even all that clear. So more recent research has verified how close the Kennewick crop circle was. Now, it pointed to, the way I interpreted it pointed to new magnetic north. It pointed to magnetic north where it existed in 1993, and also to Siberia, where magnetic north was moving. So that was one of my predictions, and this is where magnetic north is moving to Siberia. And of course, that's where it's gone. It shows that the axis of rotation. Okay, and I'll explain. You know when you have a child's top, and it starts spinning around and around and around?
Uh-huh. Right.
You could use that as an example of the precession of equinoxes of 1 degree in 72 years. But you can also look at the bigger cycles. And it showed that the axis of rotation was moving 3 degrees. That's what the crop circle showed. And when you put up the crop circle, you'll see it's about 3 degrees. And it showed that the rotation of the liquid core of the Earth is offset. It is not centered. So the rotation of the core of the Earth profoundly affects magnetic north and the axis of rotation. They are two different things. Magnetic north is not the same as the axis of rotation. And like, I think it's Thomas, it shifts about 1 degree in about 72 years. But what happens when it suddenly shifts much faster? Something happens, and the entire axis of rotation shifts very rapidly. And that's what we have happening right now. I believe that it is connected to the planet's magnetism and the rotation of the core of the Earth, and that crop circle shows all these things. And that's the reason I wanted to put it up.
Okay, I'm grabbing it and I'm going to put it up on the show page. So, now this was made, what year you said again?
1993.
Okay, here. It says 93. And it was in Benton County. And here's another illustration. The magnetics and axis dynamics have changed.
And I think that
okay.
that crop circle was made next to Hanford because all the nuclear radiation was affecting the magnetics of the Earth. You know, every time there's a nuclear explosion, there's an electromagnetic pulse.
Right. Okay, I've got some illustrations of it, so I'll be putting those on the page.
And then there is
so what was going on in 93 when they put that down? Was there something happening? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, they were showing us where we were headed. Magnetic north has moved rapidly. The magnetic field is getting weaker and weaker, which is, I think, really connected to Hanford and the nuclear radiation there. And the axis of the planet has shifted. And according to that crop circle, it's going to go for a full 3 degrees. Now, here's something else you need to know about this. In Adam's calendar in Africa, which was surveyed, it was surveyed by a survey company, and they found that the pole star, our alignment to the pole star, and Thomas was correct, in that the whatever star the axis of rotation points to is our pole star, and that is called geographical north. And so a survey of Adam's calendar found that the axis of rotation had declined. In other words, it had changed 3 degrees since Adam's calendar was constructed, since the megaliths were put in place. So if you go to a map, you look at a map, you're going to find that Adam's calendar is on a north-south alignment with the location that was Atlantis. It is in direct alignment with the Avalon sunken continent, which starts in Morocco, then goes all the way up along the coastline of Spain and France, and then crosses the Atlantic. So my theory, and what my contacts have told me, is that when Atlantis sank, you know, because it was sinking for a long time, but then it went kerplunk, it went down, and it shifted the orbit of the planet.
Oh.
I mean, a continent sinks, it shifts the orbit of the planet. And that is what that is why that the megaliths in Adam's calendar are misaligned by 3 degrees. It went off by 3 degrees. And it shoved it toward the west. Well, now the axis of rotation is moving back to the east. And the crop circle shows it's about 3 degrees east. So the planet is balancing, and that affects everything. It affects magnetic north. It affects the orbit of the planet. And those two things affect ice ages and climate change. And also, I will point out that Helena Blavatsky in the 19th century wrote about how the tilt of the planet changes over this precession of equinoxes. And it goes all the way. There was a time when our magnetic pole was close to where the equator is now. And these things are all interactive. They're not. None of them are happening in a galaxy far, far away. They're happening with this planet in this galaxy. And that was one of the reasons that they told me that they evacuated all those people 30,000 years ago, because the wars were getting so ferocious, they were afraid we would throw this planet out of orbit again. And this planet arrived in this position, in this orbit, when Tiamat flew out of its orbit near Jupiter and landed here. So this planet is not an ordinary planet. It's already been through horrendous cataclysm before it ever even got into this orbit. And our tectonic plates were all broken up. Pardon me?
I said, right. I'm just saying, I'm agreeing with you. Yes, it's already been through our planet in its birth, its creation was wrecked and havoc. Yeah. So can you back up a little bit and you and Sasha talk about the story from the Enuma Elish about the creation of our solar system and the Earth? You want to both share what you know? You're both more knowledgeable than I am.
I just think that you would just, Krsanna just gave you an accurate description of what it is, that a moon and then Nibiru itself struck what became the Pacific Basin like 4.6 billion years ago, and half became of Tiamat became Earth in the Sumerian account, and the other half became the near asteroid belt. The Kuiper belt, the further asteroid belt, was caused when Maldek was destroyed as the planetoid that became Venus passed it, and it was probably blasted by a laser, some kind of planet-destroying weapon. That's another story. But everything you say, Krsanna, sounds just like what you have an exact, accurate, same thing the Sumerians left us. And we don't know with the Sumerians, other than that, that the Nibirans, the Anunnaki told the Sumerians, but they were propagandists for their own importance too. You know, you got to look at it that way.
Now, I will give you some propaganda. That's not for my importance. It's for your understanding. And that is, way back then, I was in an extraterrestrial body, and I was a scientist. And I was a part of a team that worked with this planet when they finally got it to stop. I mean, this planet just took off like a bat out of hell from its orbit near Jupiter. And I was part of the team that worked to get this planet to, first of all, rotate on its axis again. And if I talked about Martin Luther meditating and singing to plants. You ain't seen no meditation or singing like we did. It's like, oh my God, we got to get this baby, because the life of the planet totally depended on its rotating on its axis. And it finally started back. And then little by little by little by little, and the Genesis 1 is a pretty good account of that. In general terms of all the steps the planet had to go through in healing. Right, and Janet and I were talking. In Genesis, the light is mentioned in verse 3, and again in verse 14, but in totally different context and with different words. The words that were used for the light in verse 3 was different than the word used for light in verse 14. So the first thing that had to happen is this planet is sort of like getting the Kundalini stabilized. And that is what had to happen when the planet started rotating after it just flung out of orbit. And it was not the Anunnaki. Wait a minute. That's not true. The Anunnaki were a part of that effort. But there were many others who were a part of that effort. So you're absolutely correct, Sasha. The Sumerian Anunnaki are just self-aggrandizing to an extent that's, hard to articulate. You cannot overstate how self-aggrandizing the Anunnaki were. There were many, and there were even more factions that Sitchin never mentioned. Like the people that I work with now, the Arcturians, way back when, were an Anunnaki faction.
Yeah.
And you've got to also stop and remember something. So we have these Sumerian texts. Do you think those gods, the Sumerian gods, got off their pedestal and walked the streets looking for scribes? No. The scribes, I'll tell you, the accuracy of what the Sumerian scribe wrote was probably on a par with what we write. We don't have ET standing there handing it to us. We get a little information, we look at it, we write what we think. And so what you really have in the Sumerian text is what the scribes could deduce, because Enki did not write those. Okay? It's like Zacharias.
Let me just stop at that, okay? Because Enki says, I dictated this stuff to Endubskar, and it goes on with this stuff. But for my immersion in who Enki is, he is totally capable of making a fiction called Endubskar and writing it himself, because he loved to write. He wrote in poetry.
That is entirely possible. Now, how many times has that sucker been translated and edited by other scribes?
Yeah.
This stuff apparently was this wasn't like the Bible that got subjected to editing over and over again. This was only
did the Bible
translated.
The Bible
was translated over and over again. But these are written in stone. They're written on cuneiform. So it's a different thing. It's not like they had the monks and all those people translating generation after generation to preserve them. So we're going back to the original cuneiforms. and translating. So that's where you get the unpolluted translations, by going back to the original.
Ultimately you come back to galactic. This way the people that became the Anunnaki came from the Unity Kingdom, and they were unable to keep unity, and they broke off. And this is the royals that became the Nibirans. Nibiru might have been a planet that was thrown when Sirius C went nova. That's one story about it. How it got where it was as a free-floating planet. And the other is that it was a part of in orbit around Nemesis, and a part of the Solaris Nemesis binary system. But the Anunnakian people of their stock were all over doing all kinds of things, and the ones that came to Sumer were just one group of them, from my understanding,
right.
Anyway.
That is the way I understand it, and that is why the Arcturians were in Orion when it went supernova, and their DNA was mutated. It wasn't just, they did not, no one sent out a party and say, hey, be there or be square, meet me in Baghdad. It just,
we're running out of time. That's our little message. Whoop. So we have 5 minutes to wrap this up. So let's start summarizing. Go ahead.
Well, I have very little to add to this. I mean, do you have questions about what I said?
Well,
about
what I have questions about is, how can people get your wonderful words? What have you published? Where can they see your wisdom? I love what you say, and I want to help you get it out there. But do you already have some resources that we can refer the people to?
Absolutely. I have Web of Life and Cosmos on Amazon, Krsanna Duran. We should put that up on the page. And then I have published, I think it's 5 other books. I have published 5 other books written by Ida Kannenberg, who's my guru sister. We had the same teachers, and she passed away in 2010. And you can also buy those on Amazon. God, I should send you images of those covers. So, and then I've got a webpage called runstar.org.
I just got to ask you, does your sister still talk to you? Do you still get wisdom from her?
No, and I don't want that to happen. I want her to get her work done on the other side and come back as soon as possible. In other words, I'm not pulling her back. I want her to do what needs to be done and come back because we need her. I'm one who believes that you let the dead do the work they need to do. Mm-hmm. And then you work with them when they come back. You go out, you find them, like the story of the Dalai Lama and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you can buy Web of Life and Cosmos. And I actually have quite a bit about the Anunnaki in there.
Great.
All right, so we have 2 minutes. What else would you like to tell our listeners?
I think they just need to read that book and stay tuned to what this Ice Age means to us and how we can cope with it. That's what it's all about, coping with this present cold snap that is bringing back. It's just one part of the road to an ice age, and how we can prosper and thrive. We can do it. I mean, if Martin Luther, or Luther Burbank can create spineless cactuses by talking and meditating with them, we can grow food the same way. It's just a matter of working out a conflict. Just a matter. But that's what it boils down to. And the necessity of survival in this age might be what we're waiting for. Might be what's necessary to really just get over it and get in line with what we need to do as a species. So the species and how it develops is really of utmost interest to me. But
and we're at the end of the show. Thank you. Aloha, everybody. Hey, aloha. We'll continue this another time.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at buyer risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Thanks for tuning in to Revolution Radio. Here at Revolution Radio, we are listener-sponsored and commercial-free, but there still are bills to pay. In order to raise some needed funds to cover the cost, our station is offering a silver special. In the continental United States for a $60 donation, or in Alaska, Hawaii, or Canada for a $70 donation, we will send you an uncirculated 2018 1-ounce pure silver Eagle. The $70 donation, the extra 10 is to cover shipping, by the way, outside of the continental United States. When making the donation, you must put Silver Eagle promo in the notes on the donation. And thank you for tuning in to Revolution Radio at revolution.radio and freedomslips.com. Without you, there is no us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Take a look around, kid. What do you see? Homes being foreclosed. People working 2-3 jobs just to put food on the table and still drowning in debt. Don't get me wrong. This country is founded on great ideals and principles. They've all been ruined by the banks. Open your eyes to the banks that are robbing you. You know who my favorite president was? Who? Thomas Jefferson. Because he saw all of this coming and tried to stop it. He fought the banks. JFK too, and they killed him for it. The banking institution is more dangerous than an army, he said. He also said that every generation needs a revolution, Jimmy. The American dream is just that. Just a dream. War is a continuation of politics, only by other means. Politics is a continuation of economics by other means. This is our